My sister-in-law stole $47,000 from our joint business account to fund her MLM scheme while I was hospitalized with cancer, so I documented everything that was 8 months ago. She's living in her car outside the courthouse where her bankruptcy hearing keeps getting delayed. So my daughter weighs 275 pounds and she's 5'5" at just 15 years old. Every single test and chart we've looked at shows she's extremely overweight, but she won't believe it. The thing is, my daughter has always been a heavy kid, but things really got out of control these past 2 years. She has gained over 100 pounds in these 2 years, and as her mother, I am genuinely worried about her health. I have talked to her many times about it, trying to understand why she has been eating so much and why she has gained so much weight seemingly for no reason. Yet she refuses to talk about it. What's worse is that anytime I claim anything at all about health problems related to obesity, she tells me I am fat shaming her, and that people like me are a big problem in today's society, that I am the reason bigger people who can't help it, as she puts it, are discriminated against. That when people see a fat person, it is presumed that they are lazy and unhealthy, people who cannot take care of themselves, and that me trying to push this narrative of obese people being at risk of health is exactly what is causing that. I have tried pushing back on this a lot about her. I have tried every logical way I can to explain to her that being obese is indeed unhealthy. I have tried to tell her about the heart problems, tried presenting research papers, even giving basic examples about how your joints are forced to carry a load they shouldn't be, but no matter what I do, I always get told I am fat shaming her. Another huge problem is that my daughter seems to push this lifestyle of obesity and claim it is perfectly normal. She often tells me to just get over her weight, that she should be allowed to be fat, and that as a parent I make her feel unwelcomed in my house due to her weight. It has gotten to the point where she refuses to go grocery shopping with me, because seeing me pick up vegetables or fruit and buy them is triggering for her, and that I am contributing to fat phobia by not buying junk food. One of the times we went grocery shopping together, she cried on the way home because I refused to buy her Ben & Jerry's. So one massive problem that we had been having is my daughter's refusal to go to the doctor and get her health checked out. She of course claims that doctors are fat-phobic eye-holes, and they will say whatever they need to in order to keep pushing this narrative of fat people being unhealthy. The last time we spoke about it, I put my foot down and told my daughter that she is going to the doctor to get her metrics checked, because I cannot live with a daughter who gets heavier over time and is on track to be 400 pounds by 18. What I said was very harsh, I'll admit, but I was at my wit's end with it all. My daughter got super angry and started calling me fat-phobic, that I'm fat shaming her, saying that she will live how she wants to live, and asked, who am I, to tell her what she can or can't do. It was at this point I realized that there was no way to get her to go on her own free will, so I came up with an idea. The next day I came into her room as she was eating takeout and watching Netflix, and offered her a deal. I asked her in the nicest way I could if she thought fat people were actually healthy, and said that perhaps I have been looking at it wrong the entire time. She scoffed at me and said, thank you finally. Then I made my offer. I offered her $1,000. All she has to do is go to the doctor's office, and if the results come back and state she is fully healthy, she can have the $1,000. She was ecstatic at this offer. I told her I'll even let her pick the doctor to ensure she can pick the least biased one. Well, a few weeks later we went to the doctor. We got her checked out, and the results came back 2 weeks after that. We went through them with the doctor, and what do you know? My daughter is at risk of various health problems, and at this moment of time, is very unhealthy. The doctor explained to my daughter very calmly that she is obese, and that the way she is right now, with her current sedentary lifestyle and eating habits, she is on track to have serious health problems. The doctor went into details about the dangers of it all. When we got home, I had a serious talk with her. I expected her to scream, cry, and call fat phobia, but I was wrong. She seemed very responsive to it, and she said it opened her eyes a lot. She admitted that she searched for a doctor who holds a stance where he is biased towards fat people not being as unhealthy as society makes them out to be, and even then she had to face the cold, harsh truth. This happened yesterday, and last night was also when we decided to make a change. She seems determined to be healthier, and this morning asked if we could go pick up veggies from the supermarket. I grabbed my car keys from the kitchen counter, watching Emma tie her sneakers by the front door. She moved slowly, her breathing already labored from the simple act of bending over. Her face flushed red as she straightened up, and I pretended not to notice how she had to lean against the wall for support. The drive to the grocery store took 15 minutes. Emma stared out the passenger window the entire time, her fingers drumming against her thigh. Every few seconds she'd pull at her shirt, trying to adjust how it clung to her body. The seatbelt extender I'd bought last month clicked against the door as we turned corners. Inside the store, Emma grabbed a cart and started pushing it toward the produce section. Her steps were deliberate but slow. Other shoppers glanced at us as we passed, and I saw Emma's jaw tighten each time. She stopped in front of the lettuce display, reaching for a head of romaine before pulling her hand back. What about this one? I picked up a bag of pre-washed spring mix, keeping my voice neutral. Emma nodded and placed it in the cart. We moved to the tomatoes next. She selected 3, then added cucumbers and bell peppers. Her movements became more confident as we filled the cart with vegetables. When we reached the fruit section, she hesitated again. The doctor said natural sugars are okay in moderation, she said quietly, picking up an apple and examining it. We added apples, bananas, and a container of strawberries. Emma pushed the cart toward the meat department, but her pace slowed near the frozen food aisle. She stopped completely when we passed the ice cream section. Her eyes locked onto the Ben & Jerry's display, and her hands gripped the cart handle until her knuckles turned white. I waited, saying nothing. After 30 seconds, Emma forced herself to keep walking. We selected chicken chest and ground turkey, then headed to checkout. The cashier, a teenager who looked about Emma's age, scanned our items without comment. Emma unloaded the cart herself, arranging the vegetables on the belt with careful precision. Back home, Emma helped carry the grocery bags inside. She set them on the kitchen counter and started unpacking without being asked. I watched her organize the vegetables in the crisper drawer, noting how she had to rest one hand on the counter for balance as she bent down. Should we prep some of these now? Emma asked, holding up the bell peppers. We worked side by side, washing and chopping vegetables for the week ahead. Emma's knife skills were clumsy at first, but she found a rhythm. She filled containers with cut vegetables while I portioned out the chicken into freezer bags. Neither of us mentioned that this was the first time in 2 years she'd helped with meal prep. Emma's phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at the screen, and her face darkened. She turned the phone face down without responding to whatever message she'd received. When it buzzed again, she powered it off completely. "Everything okay?" I asked, sealing the last freezer bag. "Just some people from school." Emma focused intently on closing a container of sliced cucumbers. "They saw me at the doctor's office yesterday." The kitchen fell silent except for the snap of container lids. Emma's shoulders hunched forward as she worked. When we finished, she surveyed the refrigerator filled with prepared vegetables and lean proteins. Her expression was unreadable. That evening, Emma emerged from her room for dinner without being called. She'd changed into looser clothing, and I noticed she'd been crying. Her eyes were puffy and red, but she sat at the dining table and waited while I plated our meal. I served grilled chicken with roasted vegetables and a small portion of brown rice. Emma stared at her plate for a long moment before picking up her fork. She took small bites, chewing slowly. Halfway through the meal, she set down her fork and pressed her palms against the table. "Mom, I need to tell you something." Her voice cracked. "About why I gained all this weight." I stayed quiet, afraid that any response might make her retreat back into silence. Emma's hands trembled as she traced patterns on the placemat. 2 years ago, I was dating this boy, Tyler. She spoke his name like it physically hurt. We'd been together for 3 months. I thought he really liked me. Emma's breathing became shaky. She grabbed her water glass and took several sips before continuing. "His friends started making comments about my weight. I wasn't even that big then, maybe 20 pounds overweight. But they called me names, said things when Tyler wasn't around. Then one day, Tyler asked me to meet him after school." Tears rolled down Emma's cheeks. She wiped them away roughly with the back of her hand. "He broke up with me in front of everyone, said he couldn't date someone who looked like me anymore, that I was." She choked on the words, "that I was too disgusting to be seen with." His friends were laughing. Everyone was staring. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to remain still. Emma needed to get this out without interruption. "I went home and ate everything I could find. It made me feel better for a little while. Then I felt worse, so I ate more. I found these online communities that said it was okay to be fat, that people like Tyler were the problem. They made me feel like gaining weight was an act of rebellion." Emma pushed her plate away and buried her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. "I convinced myself that if I just accepted being fat, if I made it my whole identity, it wouldn't hurt when people rejected me. But it got out of control. I couldn't stop eating. Every time someone looked at me, I assumed they were thinking the same things Tyler said. So I ate more." She looked up at me, mascara streaking down her face. "I'm scared, Mom. I'm so scared. The doctor showed me those test results, and all I could think about was how I did this to myself because some stupid boy said mean things. I threw away my health because I couldn't handle rejection." Emma stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. She paced to the window, wrapping her arms around herself. "I don't know how to stop. Even today at the store, all I wanted was ice cream. My brain keeps telling me food will make me feel better, even though I know it's unaliving me." I rose from my chair and moved toward her, but she held up a hand to stop me. "I need to say this. I've been horrible to you. All those times I accused you of fat shaming, I knew you were just worried about me. But admitting you were right meant admitting I had a problem, and I wasn't ready for that." Emma turned to face me fully. In the kitchen light, I could see how much she'd aged in 2 years. The carefree teenager I'd known was buried under layers of pain and defensive armor. "I want to get better. I need to get better, but I don't know if I'm strong enough." She returned to the table and sat down heavily. The chair creaked under her weight, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks at the sound. She picked up her fork again and forced herself to take another bite of chicken. We finished dinner in silence. Emma ate everything on her plate, though I could see the internal struggle with each bite. When we cleared the table, she insisted on doing the dishes. I stood beside her, drying plates as she washed them. "Tomorrow morning," Emma said quietly, handing me a clean plate. "Could we go for that walk? Maybe just around the block to start?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. Emma finished the last dish and dried her hands on the kitchen towel. She looked at the refrigerator full of healthy food, then back at me. "I'm going to bed early. If I stay up, I'll just want to eat." She paused at the kitchen doorway. "Thank you for not giving up on me." I listened to her heavy footsteps on the stairs, each one a reminder of the weight she carried, both physical and emotional. The house settled into quiet. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at Emma's empty chair, and finally let myself cry. The next morning arrived too quickly. I heard Emma's alarm go off at 6:30, followed by the heavy creak of her bed as she got up. 20 minutes later, she appeared in the kitchen wearing workout clothes that stretched tight across her body. The fabric strained at the seams, and I noticed she'd safety pinned the waistband where it had torn. "Ready?" she asked, avoiding eye contact. We stepped outside into the cool morning air. Emma made it to the end of our driveway before stopping to catch her breath. Her face was already flushed and sweat beaded on her forehead. She pressed one hand against her chest, breathing hard. "Just need a second," she gasped. We walked slowly down our street. Emma's breathing grew more labored with each step. By the time we reached the corner, she was wheezing audibly. Her face had turned an alarming shade of red. She leaned against a mailbox, unable to continue. "Maybe we should head back," I suggested gently. Emma shook her head stubbornly, but her legs were trembling. We turned around, and the walk home took twice as long. She had to stop 3 more times, gripping fences and light posts for support. When we finally reached our front door, she collapsed onto the porch steps, sobbing between gasps for air. "I can't even walk around the block," she cried. "What have I done to myself?" I sat beside her on the steps, feeling the wood groan under our combined weight. Emma's breathing slowly returned to normal, but the defeat in her eyes remained. She struggled to stand, needing both hands on the railing to pull herself up. Inside, Emma headed straight for the kitchen. I watched her open the refrigerator and stare at the healthy food we'd bought yesterday. Her hand hovered over the vegetable drawer before moving to the freezer. She stood there for a full minute, gripping the freezer handle. "There's nothing to eat," she said flatly. "Emma, I know what we bought." She slammed the freezer door. "But there's nothing to eat. Nothing that helps." helps. She stormed upstairs, each step thundering through the house. Her bedroom door slammed with enough force to rattle the pictures on the wall. I heard drawers opening and closing, then silence. An hour later, I knocked on her door. No response. I tried the handle and found it locked. Emma, we need to leave for school in 20 minutes. I'm not going, came the muffled reply. Honey, you can't miss school. Watch me. I stood outside her door, weighing my options. Finally, I decided to give her space. One day wouldn't hurt. But when I came home from work that afternoon, I found evidence that Emma had ordered delivery while I was gone. Empty containers filled the kitchen trash can. Grease-stained bags were stuffed behind the garbage bin. The credit card statement on my phone showed 3 separate food delivery charges. Emma was back in her room, door locked again. I could hear her television through the door. I knocked, but she ignored me. This pattern continued for 3 days. She refused to go to school, ordered food whenever I left the house, and locked herself away. The healthy food in our refrigerator began to spoil. On the 4th day, I took time off work. I couldn't leave her alone to order more food. Emma emerged from her room around noon, saw me in the living room, and immediately turned to go back upstairs. We need to talk, I said. There's nothing to talk about. She kept walking. Emma, please. You can't hide forever. She spun around, her face contorted with anger. Hide? You think I can hide? Look at me. She gestured at her body. Everyone sees this. Everyone knows exactly what I am. A fat, disgusting failure who can't even walk around the block. You're not? Stop lying, Emma screamed. Stop pretending this is fine. Stop acting like vegetables and a few walks will fix this. I'm 275 pounds, Mom. Do you know what that means? Do you know what it's like to be trapped in this body? She grabbed the sides of her stomach, shaking the excess weight. This doesn't go away. This is who I am now. This is what Tyler turned me into. Tyler didn't. Yes, he did. He started this. He made me realize that no matter what I do, people will always see me as disgusting. So why bother? Why put myself through torture trying to change when it won't matter? Emma's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her face went pale. She declined the call, but it immediately rang again. This time she answered. What do you want? She snapped. Her expression changed as she listened. That's not true. Who told you that? She listened more, her free hand clenching into a fist. I don't care what Tyler said. He's lying. My stomach dropped at Tyler's name. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she continued listening. Fine, whatever. Believe what you want. She hung up and threw her phone onto the couch. What was that about? I asked. Emma laughed bitterly. Apparently Tyler's been telling people I begged him to take me back, that I've been stalking him, that I threatened to unalive myself if he didn't date me again. What? That's not true. Of course it's not true. I haven't talked to him since. She trailed off, wrapping her arms around herself. Since that day. But everyone believes him. Why wouldn't they? Look at me. Of course the fat girl is desperate and crazy. Her phone buzzed with text messages. She grabbed it and scrolled through them, her face crumpling more with each one. They're all laughing at me, she whispered. Someone took a picture of me at the doctor's office. They're sharing it in group chats. They're making memes. She showed me her phone. The messages were cruel beyond belief. Comments about her weight, her appearance, speculation about how much she ate. Someone had photoshopped her face onto a whale. Another message contained a video someone had secretly recorded of her struggling to fit into a desk at school. Emma dropped her phone and ran upstairs. I heard her bedroom door slam, followed by the sound of things being thrown around. I picked up her phone as it continued buzzing with more horrible messages. Each one was worse than the last. I climbed the stairs and found Emma's door locked again. I could hear her crying and throwing things. Emma, let me in. Go away. Something heavy hit the door. I heard glass breaking. Emma, open this door right now. Leave me alone. This is all your fault. If you hadn't made me go to that stupid doctor, none of this would be happening. More crashes came from inside her room. I ran downstairs to get the spare key from the kitchen drawer. When I returned and unlocked her door, I found chaos. Emma had torn posters off her walls, thrown books across the room, and shattered a mirror. She sat in the middle of the destruction, holding a shard of broken glass. Emma, put that down. She looked at the glass in her hand like she'd forgotten it was there. I wasn't. I'm not going to. She dropped the shard and dissolved into tears. I carefully stepped over the broken items and sat beside her on the floor. Emma collapsed against me, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. I can't do this, she wept. I can't go back to school. I can't face them. I can't live like this anymore. I held her while she cried, feeling her whole body shake. When her sobs finally subsided, we were both exhausted. Emma's face was swollen from crying, and her breathing was ragged. We need to get you help, I said softly. Real help, not just diet and exercise. You need to talk to someone. Emma nodded weakly. The doctor mentioned a therapist, one who specializes in what I have. We spent the next hour cleaning up her room. Emma moved slowly, having to sit down frequently to catch her breath. As we picked up the broken mirror pieces, she stared at her reflection in one of the larger shards. I don't recognize myself anymore, she said quietly. That evening, I called the therapist doctor Mark had recommended. They had an opening the following week. Emma agreed to go, though I could see the fear in her eyes. We ate dinner together again, a simple salad with grilled chicken. Emma picked at her food, managing only a few bites. I'm not hungry, she said, pushing her plate away. You need to eat something. I know, but my stomach hurts. Everything hurts. She went to bed early again. I stayed up researching eating disorder treatment programs, support groups, anything that might help. Around midnight, I heard Emma's door open. She made her way downstairs, each step creaking under her weight. I found her standing in front of the open refrigerator, tears streaming down her face. I'm so hungry, she whispered, but I'm scared to eat. I'm scared not to eat. I don't know what to do anymore. I made her a small plate of vegetables with hummus. She ate slowly, mechanically, like each bite was a battle. When she finished, she looked at the empty plate with disgust. That didn't help, she said. Nothing helps. The hunger isn't really hunger. It's something else. It's like a hole inside me that food used to fill, but now nothing works. We sat at the kitchen table in silence. Emma's hands shook as she traced patterns on the placemat, the same nervous gesture from dinner. What if I can't get better? She asked. What if this is just who I am now? That's not true. You're only 15. You have your whole life. Do I? Emma interrupted. The doctor said if I keep going like this, I might not make it to 30. 15 years, Mom. That's all I might have left. The weight of her words settled between us. Emma stood up, the chair groaning beneath her. I'm going back to bed. Tomorrow I'll try again. I'll go to school. I'll eat the healthy food. I'll pretend everything is fine. She paused at the kitchen doorway, looking back at me. But we both know I'm lying. The next morning, Emma did go to school. I dropped her off, watching as she struggled to exit the car. Other students stared as she walked slowly toward the entrance. Some whispered to their friends. A few took out their phones. Emma kept her head down, but I could see her shoulders shaking. She lasted 2 hours before the school called. The nurse said Emma was having a panic attack and needed to be picked up. I found her in the nurse's office, hyperventilating into a paper bag. Her face was blotchy and swollen from crying. I can't breathe, she gasped between breaths into the bag. Everyone was staring. They were all laughing. I heard them talking about the pictures. The nurse, a kind woman named Mrs. Patterson, rubbed Emma's back gently. Honey, you need to calm down. Your blood pressure is very high. Emma's breathing gradually slowed, but her hands continued to shake. She looked at me with desperate eyes. Please don't make me go back. Please. I signed her out and took her home. Emma went straight to her room, but this time she left the door open. I could see her lying on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed constantly with notifications, but she didn't check it. That afternoon, I made an appointment with the principal to discuss the bullying. He promised to investigate but warned that social media harassment was difficult to control. He suggested Emma might benefit from online schooling for the remainder of the year. When I told Emma about the online school option, her relief was palpable. Yes, she said immediately. Please, I can't go back there. Not like this. We started the enrollment process that week. Emma seemed calmer knowing she wouldn't have to face her classmates. She even joined me for grocery shopping, though she moved slowly through the store and needed to sit on the bench by the pharmacy halfway through. As we passed the ice cream aisle, Emma stopped. She stared at the Ben & Jerry's display, her hands gripping the cart handle. I used to eat a whole pint every night, she said quietly. Sometimes two. It was the only thing that made me feel better. An older woman passing by gave Emma a disapproving look, her eyes scanning Emma's body with obvious judgment. Emma noticed and hunched her shoulders, trying to make herself smaller. Let's go, she whispered. We finished shopping quickly. At checkout, the teenage cashier stared openly at Emma's size. Emma's face burned red as she loaded the groceries onto the belt. Her hands shook as she placed each item. In the car, Emma broke down again. Did you see how they looked at me? Like I'm some kind of freak show? People can be cruel, I said, though my own anger at their stares burned hot. It's only going to get worse, Emma said. The doctor said I need to lose over 100 pounds just to not be morbidly obese. Do you know how long that will take? Years. Years of people staring and judging and laughing. She was right, and we both knew it. The road ahead seemed impossibly long. That night, Emma ate dinner with me but barely managed half her plate. She excused herself early, claiming exhaustion. I found her an hour later in the bathroom, standing on the scale. The digital display read 278. I gained 3 pounds, she said numbly. Even trying to eat healthy, I gained weight. How is that possible? Weight fluctuates. Stop. Emma stepped off the scale. Just stop. We both know this isn't normal fluctuation. My body is broken. I broke it. She returned to her room, and I heard her crying again. The sound had become so familiar over the past week that it felt like background noise. I stood outside her door, wanting to help, but not knowing how. The therapist appointment couldn't come soon enough. Emma needed professional help, more than I could provide. I made a list of questions to ask, concerns to address. At the top of the list, I wrote, how do I save my daughter from herself? The next few days blurred together. Emma started online school, sitting at her desk for hours trying to focus, but I could see her struggling. She'd get up frequently for snacks, then berate herself for eating. The cycle of hunger, shame, and self-hatred continued despite our efforts. One afternoon, I came home early and found Emma passed out on the couch. Empty food containers surrounded her. She'd ordered delivery again while I was at work. When she woke up, she looked at the evidence of her binge with horror. I'm sorry, she cried. I'm so sorry. I was doing homework and I couldn't stop thinking about food. I tried to ignore it, but it got worse and worse until I couldn't think about anything else. We cleaned up together. Emma moved even more slowly than usual. Her breathing labored from the binge. She had to sit down twice just to gather the empty containers. The therapist appointment is tomorrow, I reminded her. Emma nodded. I know. I'm scared. Why? What if they can't help me? What if I'm too far gone? That night, Emma couldn't sleep. I heard her pacing her room, the floorboards creaking with each heavy step. Around 3 in the morning, she came to my room. Mom, can I sleep in here? Like when I was little? I moved over to make room. Emma climbed into bed beside me, the mattress dipping significantly under her weight. She curled up as small as she could make herself, which wasn't very small at all. Remember when I was 8 and had that nightmare about monsters? She whispered in the dark. You told me monsters weren't real. I remember. You were wrong. The monsters are real. They're just inside us instead. I reached over and held her hand. Emma squeezed back, her palms sweaty and warm. Tomorrow we start fighting the monsters, I said. What if they win? They won't. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then, so softly I almost missed it, she said, they're winning now. We lay in silence until Emma's breathing deepened into sleep. I stayed awake, listening to her labored breathing, the occasional wheeze, the way she gasped slightly between breaths. My 15-year-old daughter sounded like an elderly person struggling for air. The morning of the therapy appointment arrived gray and rainy. Emma dressed carefully, trying on 3 different outfits outfits before settling on her largest sweatshirt and elastic waist jeans. She barely touched breakfast, too nervous to eat. What if the therapist is like everyone else? She asked as we drove to the appointment. What if they judge me too? Dr. Mark said this therapist specializes in cases like yours. They understand. Emma stared out the window at the rain. No one understands. How could they? Unless they've been where I am, they can't really know. We arrived at the therapist's office 10 minutes early. Emma struggled to get out of the car in the rain, moving slowly to avoid slipping. In the waiting room, she chose a sturdy-looking chair without arms, testing it carefully before sitting down. Other patients glanced at us. A thin woman quickly looked away. A teenager about Emma's age whispered something to his mother. Emma pulled out her phone, pretending to be absorbed in it, but I could see her hands trembling. Emma Morrison? A voice called. We looked up to see a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a warm smile. She was average-sized, neither thin nor heavy, dressed professionally but comfortably. I'm Dr. Catherine Martinez, she said, extending her hand to Emma. It's nice to meet you. Emma shook her hand tentatively. Dr. Martinez led us back to her office, which had a comfortable couch and several chairs. Emma chose the couch, sitting carefully on the edge. Before we begin, Dr. Martinez said, settling into her chair, I want you to know that this is a safe space. Nothing you say here will shock or upset me. I've worked with many young people struggling with similar issues. Emma nodded but remained tense. I could see her pulling at her sweatshirt, trying to cover herself more. Would you prefer to talk with just me first, or would you like your mom to stay? Dr. Martinez asked Emma directly. Emma glanced at me, uncertainty in her eyes. Maybe just you first? I squeezed Emma's shoulder and left the room. For the next 50 minutes, I sat in the waiting room, checking my phone obsessively, wondering what was happening behind that closed door. I could occasionally hear Emma's voice, though not the words. Once I heard what sounded like crying. Finally, the door opened. Emma emerged with red, puffy eyes, but something else in her expression. Hope, maybe. Or at least the possibility of it. Mrs. Morrison, could you join us for a few minutes? Dr. Martinez asked. I followed them back into the office. Emma had moved to the center of the couch now, looking more relaxed than when we'd arrived. Emma has been very brave today, Dr. Martinez began. She shared a lot about what she's been experiencing. With her permission, I'd like to discuss our treatment plan. Emma nodded. It's okay. Tell her. Dr. Martinez leaned forward slightly. Emma is dealing with binge eating disorder, complicated by trauma and depression. The weight gain is a symptom, not the core problem. We need to address the emotional roots while also working on developing healthier coping mechanisms. She said I'm not crazy, Emma interjected. That lots of people deal with this. That's right, Dr. Martinez confirmed. Emma, you're not alone in this struggle. Recovery is possible, but it takes time and work. I'd like to see you twice a week to start. We'll use a combination of cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavior therapy to help you develop new ways of managing emotions without turning to food. Emma looked at me. She also said, maybe medication might help for the depression and anxiety. That's something we can explore with a psychiatrist I work with, Dr. Martinez added. But first, we'll focus on building coping skills and understanding the connection between emotions and eating behaviors. We scheduled appointments for the next month. As we left, Emma walked a little straighter. In the car, she was quiet, but not in the desperate way of recent days. She gave me homework, Emma said finally. I have to keep a feelings journal, not about food or weight, just feelings. And she wants me to practice something called mindful breathing when I get overwhelmed. How do you feel about that? Emma considered the question. Scared, but also, like maybe there's a way out of this. Dr. Martinez said recovery isn't about being perfect. It's about progress. That evening, Emma ate dinner without complaint. She still struggled, still pushed food around her plate, but she managed to finish most of it. Afterward, she pulled out a notebook and began writing in what I assumed was her feelings journal. I'm writing about Tyler, she said without looking up. Dr. Martinez said I need to process what happened instead of eating my feelings about it. She wrote for an hour, filling pages with her neat handwriting. When she finished, she looked drained but somehow lighter. I never realized how angry I was, she said. Not just at Tyler, but at myself, at you, at the whole world. Dr. Martinez said anger turned inward becomes depression, and I've been turning it inward for 2 years. Emma stood up, steadying herself on the table. I'm going to take a shower and go to bed. Tomorrow I have online school and then I want to try walking again, just to the corner. Dr. Martinez said small steps count too. As she headed upstairs, moving slowly but with purpose, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Not quite optimism, but the absence of despair. It was a start. The following week dragged by painfully. Emma attended her online classes but struggled to concentrate. I caught her sneaking food from the pantry between lessons, stuffing granola bars into her pockets when she thought I wasn't looking. She'd disappear into her room and return with empty wrappers hidden in her sleeves. Her second therapy appointment arrived on Thursday. Emma spent an hour getting ready, trying on different outfits that might hide her size better. Nothing worked. She settled on black leggings and an oversized hoodie, tugging at the fabric constantly as we drove to Dr. Martinez's office. This time, Emma went in alone from the start. I sat in the waiting room, watching other patients come and go. Through the door, I heard Emma's voice rise occasionally, then Dr. Martinez's calm responses. When Emma emerged, her face was blotchy from crying, but she held herself differently. Doctor, Martinez wants to try something, Emma told me in the car. She thinks I need more structure. There's a day program at the hospital. Not inpatient, just during the day, for people with eating disorders. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. What do you think about that? Emma stared at her lap, picking at a loose thread on her hoodie. I'm scared, but I can't keep doing this alone. Yesterday, I ate an entire box of cereal while you were in the shower. I couldn't stop. We visited the program the next day. The building looked like any medical office from the outside. Inside, Emma's breathing quickened as we checked in at reception. A nurse led us on a tour, showing us group therapy rooms, a cafeteria where patients ate supervised meals, and exercise facilities designed for people at various fitness levels. Emma watched everything with wide eyes. In one room, a group of teenagers sat in a circle talking. Some were thin, others heavy like Emma. She pressed her face against the window, studying them. They look normal, she whispered. The program coordinator, a woman named Catherine, explained the schedule. Patients arrived at 8 in the morning and stayed until 4. They attended group therapy, individual counseling, nutrition education, and supervised meals. Emma would need to commit to 5 days a week for at least 12 weeks. That's 3 months, Emma said, her voice shaking. What about school? Catherine assured us they could coordinate with Emma's online program. Students had study time built into the schedule. Emma nodded slowly, but I could see her hands trembling in her lap. That night, Emma barely touched dinner. She pushed green beans around her plate, constructing small piles that she then flattened with her fork. When I asked if she wanted to talk about the program, she shook her head and excused herself. I found her later in the bathroom, standing sideways in front of the mirror. She lifted her shirt, examining her stomach from different angles. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she grabbed handfuls of flesh, pulling and pushing as if she could reshape herself through force. I don't want strangers seeing me eat, she said without turning around. What if I can't do it? What if I'm the biggest one there? Monday morning came too fast. Emma woke at 6, earlier than necessary. I heard her moving around her room, opening and closing drawers repeatedly. When she came downstairs, she wore the same black leggings and hoodie combination, her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. She couldn't eat breakfast. Her hands shook as she tried to drink water, spilling some on the counter. In the car, she pressed herself against the passenger door, making herself as small as possible. Her breathing came in short gasps. I changed my mind, she said as we pulled into the hospital parking lot. I can't do this. Take me home. I parked but didn't turn off the engine. Emma's chest heaved as she hyperventilated, her face growing red. She grabbed the door handle but didn't open it. What if they make me eat things I don't want? What if everyone stares? What if— Emma. I kept my voice steady. One day. Try one day. She sat frozen for 5 minutes, watching other people enter the building. Finally, she opened the door and hauled herself out of the car. Each step toward the entrance seemed to require enormous effort. At the door, she stopped and looked back at me, terror written across her face. Inside, Catherine greeted us warmly. Emma filled out paperwork with shaking hands, struggling to hold the pen. When Catherine said it was time for me to leave, Emma grabbed my arm. Please don't go. I'll be back at 4, I promised. Emma's fingers dug into my arm. Catherine gently intervened, guiding Emma toward the program area. I watched them disappear down a hallway, Emma looking back repeatedly until they turned a corner. The day passed in a blur of anxiety. I couldn't focus on work, checking my phone constantly for any calls from the hospital. At 3:45, I was already in the parking lot, watching the entrance. Emma emerged at 4:05, moving slowly but steadily. Her face was puffy from crying, but she was walking on her own. She climbed into the car and immediately burst into tears. It was awful, she sobbed. They made me eat a whole sandwich at lunch, a whole sandwich, and chips, and an apple. I thought I was going to die. She cried the entire drive home. In between sobs, she told me about the other patients. A girl named Sarah who'd been coming for 2 months. A boy who weighed even more than Emma. A woman in her 30s who'd been struggling since high school. They all watched me eat. Emma wept. Everyone could see how much I was struggling. This one girl finished her lunch in 5 minutes while I took 45 minutes for a sandwich. That evening, Emma locked herself in her room. I heard her on the phone with Dr. Martinez, her voice rising and falling. When she came out for dinner, she looked exhausted. I have to go back tomorrow, she said flatly. Dr. Martinez says the first week is the hardest. Tuesday was marginally better. Emma still cried in the car afterward, but she'd managed to eat breakfast at the program without having a complete breakdown. She told me about group therapy, where they'd discussed emotional triggers. Emma hadn't spoken, but she'd listened. By Thursday, Emma was getting out of the car without me having to coax her. She still moved slowly, still looked terrified, but she went. That afternoon, she came out with another patient, a girl around her age. They talked for a moment before the girl's mother picked her up. That's Megan, Emma told me. She's been here 6 weeks. She said it gets easier. Friday brought a new challenge, family therapy. I joined Emma and a therapist named Jonathan for an hour-long session. Emma sat as far from me as possible on the couch, arms wrapped around herself. Jonathan asked about our relationship before Emma's weight gain. Emma stared at the floor as I talked about how close we'd been, how she used to tell me everything. When Jonathan asked Emma to respond, she exploded. You want to know what changed? I got fat and Mom got embarrassed. Emma's face turned red. She looks at me like I'm disgusting, like I'm not even her daughter anymore. The accusation hit like a physical blow. I tried to respond, but Emma wasn't finished. You think I don't know how you look at me? How you watch everything I eat? How you sigh when I can't fit into restaurant booths? You're ashamed of me. She broke down sobbing. Jonathan guided us through the emotion, helping Emma articulate her fears and helping me express my concern without judgment. By the end, we were both crying, but something had shifted. The weekend was hard. Without the structure of the program, Emma struggled. I caught her binging on Saturday night, standing in front of the open refrigerator eating leftover pasta with her hands. When she saw me, she didn't stop. She kept eating, tears streaming down her face until the container was empty. I can't stop, she said, reaching for a block of cheese. I know I should stop, but I can't. I gently closed the refrigerator. Emma stood there, pasta sauce on her chin, looking lost. She let me guide her to the kitchen table where she sat heavily, the chair creaking under her weight. Monday will be better, I said. Emma laughed bitterly. Will it? I'll go to the program and eat their measured portions and talk about my feelings, then come home and eat everything I can find. What's the point? She went to bed without another word. I heard her crying through the night, the sound muffled by her pillow. Sunday passed in tense silence. Emma refused to leave her room except for for mandatory meals, which she ate mechanically without speaking. Monday's return to the program brought unexpected news. Catherine pulled me aside during drop-off. "Emma had a breakthrough in group on Friday after you left," she said. She finally shared about Tyler. The other patients were very supportive. "I think she's starting to trust the process." That afternoon, Emma came out calmer than I'd seen her in weeks. She told me about sharing her story, how other patients had similar experiences of rejection and humiliation. One boy had been dumped at prom in front of the entire school. Another girl's mother had put a lock on the refrigerator. "I'm not the only one," Emma said wonderingly. "Everyone there has a Tyler. Everyone has a story." Week 3 brought visible changes. Emma still struggled, still had bad days, but she was engaging more. She started speaking in group therapy, sharing her experiences with using fat acceptance rhetoric as a shield. Other patients related, discussing their own defensive mechanisms. The supervised meals remained challenging. Emma told me about panic attacks triggered by certain foods, about the nutritionist who sat with her while she cried over a piece of pizza, but she was eating 3 meals and 2 snacks every day, no matter how long it took. "They won't let me leave the table until I finish," she said. "Yesterday it took me 2 hours to eat dinner. Everyone else was gone, but the staff stayed with me." Her weight hadn't changed much yet. The program emphasized that weight loss wasn't the primary goal. Developing a healthy relationship with food was, but Emma was building stamina. She could walk from the parking lot without stopping to catch her breath. Week 4 introduced exercise therapy. Emma was terrified, remembering her failed attempt to walk around the block. The program started slowly, with chair exercises and water aerobics designed for people with limited mobility. Emma called me crying after the first session. "Everyone could see how hard it was for me," she wept. "I could barely do 5 minutes on the recumbent bike. This one woman did 30 minutes like it was nothing. But she went back the next day, and the next. By the end of the week, she'd managed 7 minutes on the bike and completed a full session of water aerobics. The pride in her voice when she told me was unmistakable." Week 5 brought a setback. Emma's weight had increased by 2 pounds. She catastrophized, convinced the program was making her fatter. She refused to attend for 2 days, locking herself in her room. Dr. Martinez made a house call, something she rarely did. They talked for 2 hours. When Dr. Martinez left, Emma was ready to return to the program. She wouldn't tell me what they'd discussed, but she seemed more determined than before. "Dr. Martinez says I'm in the messy middle," Emma explained, "where everything feels worse before it gets better. She says my body is confused because I'm eating regularly instead of binging and restricting. It has to learn to trust that food will keep coming." Week 6 introduced cooking classes. Emma learned to prepare balanced meals, to measure portions without obsessing, to plate food attractively. She brought home a container of stir-fry she'd made, proudly showing me how she'd included all the food groups. "The nutritionist says I need to stop categorizing food as good or bad," Emma said, taking a small bite of her creation. "Food is just food. It's what I do with it that matters." Her classmates from regular school found out about the program. The cruel messages started again. Someone created an Instagram account called Emma's Eating Disorder Journey, filled with unflattering photos taken without her knowledge. Emma discovered it during lunch at the program. She didn't binge. Instead, she brought it to group therapy. The other patients rallied around her, sharing their own experiences with bullying. The program's social worker got involved, contacting the school about the harassment. The account was removed, but the damage was done. "They're never going to let me forget," Emma said that night. "Even if I lose weight, even if I get better, I'll always be the fat girl who needed treatment." Week 7 brought family therapy again. This time, Emma sat closer to me. Jonathan guided us through exercises and communication, helping us practice talking about difficult topics without blame or judgment. Emma admitted she'd been testing me, pushing boundaries to see if I'd give up on her. "I wanted you to hate me as much as I hated myself," she said quietly. "Then I could justify giving up." We practiced making meal plans together, with Emma teaching me what she'd learned about balanced nutrition. She showed me how to plate food attractively, how to make vegetables more appealing. The role reversal felt strange but hopeful. Week 8 introduced restaurant practice. The program took patients to local restaurants to practice ordering and eating in public. Emma was terrified, but she went. She told me about ordering grilled chicken and vegetables, about eating slowly while other diners stared. "This older man actually took a picture of me," she said, anger replacing her usual shame. "Like I was some kind of zoo animal. The program coordinator made him delete it." Her anger was progress. Dr. Martinez explained that Emma was moving from internalized shame to appropriate outward anger at people who mistreated her. It was a necessary step in healing. Week 9 brought another breakthrough. Emma's weight had stabilized. More importantly, she'd gone a full week without a binge episode. She'd had urges, had cried through several meals, but she'd used the coping skills from therapy instead of turning to food. "I called Megan when I wanted to order delivery," Emma told me. "We talked for an hour. She reminded me that the feeling would pass, and it did." She was building friendships in the program. Phone numbers were exchanged, support networks formed. Emma wasn't alone in her struggle anymore. She had people who understood, who didn't judge, who celebrated small victories with her. Week 10 introduced discussions about transitioning out of the program. Emma panicked, convinced she wasn't ready. The team assured her it would be gradual. She'd step down to 3 days a week, then 2, with increased outpatient support. "What if I relapse?" Emma asked during family therapy. "What if I can't do it without the structure?" Jonathan helped us develop a home plan, scheduled meals and snacks, regular therapy appointments, support group meetings. Emma would continue seeing Dr. Martinez twice weekly and attend an outpatient eating disorder group. Week 11 focused on relapse prevention. Emma learned to identify warning signs, to recognize when she was slipping into old patterns. She created a list of people to call, activities to try instead of binging. She practiced these skills in the program, with staff creating challenging scenarios. "They had me sit with a pint of Ben & Jerry's for 30 minutes, Emma told me, pride evident in her voice. "Just sit with it. Not eat it, not throw it away. Just coexist." I did it. I cried the whole time, but I did it. Her final week arrived too quickly. Emma was scheduled to graduate to partial programming on Friday. She was terrified but also proud. She'd completed 12 weeks of intensive treatment, something she'd never thought possible. Thursday night, she showed me a letter she'd written to Tyler, not to send, but as part of her therapy. In it, she detailed how his cruelty had triggered her spiral, but also how she'd chosen to let it define her. She took responsibility for her recovery while acknowledging the pain he'd caused. Dr. Martinez says I might never get an apology, Emma said, folding the letter carefully. So I have to forgive him for myself, not for him. Friday's graduation felt anticlimactic. There was no ceremony, just a transition meeting with the treatment team. Emma would attend the program Monday, Wednesday, and Friday the following week. She'd have outpatient therapy on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That evening, Emma asked if we could go out to dinner to celebrate. We went to a small restaurant near our house. Emma studied the menu carefully, then ordered without anxiety. When her meal arrived, she ate steadily, pausing between bites to talk. I'm not fixed, she said, cutting her chicken into small pieces. I might never be fixed, but I'm better. I know how to fight now. She was right. The road ahead remained long and difficult. Emma still weighed 271 pounds, only 7 pounds less than when she'd started. But she'd gained tools, support, and hope. She'd learned that food wasn't the enemy, that her worth wasn't determined by her weight. As we left the restaurant, Emma didn't rush to the car. She walked slowly but without shame, no longer trying to make herself invisible. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, we celebrated survival. The next morning, Emma woke early and made breakfast. Nothing elaborate, just scrambled eggs and toast. But she plated it carefully, adding sliced tomatoes for color. We ate together at the kitchen table, no longer enemies in a food war. I want to try walking again, Emma said, finishing her eggs. Just to the corner. Will you come with me? We laced up our sneakers and stepped outside. Emma made it to the corner without stopping, her breathing heavy but manageable. She touched the stop sign like a talisman, then turned back. Halfway home, she paused, not from exhaustion, but to look at the sunrise. It's pretty, she said simply. We walked the rest of the way in comfortable silence. At our front door, Emma turned to me with tears in her eyes. Thank you for not giving up on me, she said, even when I gave up on myself. Inside, Emma headed to her room to start online school. I heard her video call begin, her voice steady as she answered attendance. She had 3 program days this week, 2 therapy appointments, and a support group meeting. Her calendar was full of recovery. I thought about the $1,000 bet that had started this journey. The money sat untouched in an envelope in my desk drawer. Neither of us had mentioned it since that day. It had never really been about the money anyway. Emma appeared in the doorway, laptop in hand. Mom, can I do school down here today? My room feels too isolated. She settled at the kitchen table, spreading out her notebooks and pens. As she worked on algebra, I saw glimpses of the daughter I'd known before Tyler, before the weight, before the pain. She was still there, just wrapped in layers of hurt that were slowly, carefully, being peeled away. The work continued. Every meal, every therapy session, every small victory against the voice telling her to give up. Emma was learning to live with her body instead of despite it, to nourish herself instead of punish herself. She was choosing recovery, one difficult day at a time.